I exposed my wife's cheating campaign to humiliate me, documented her plot to force me out, filed for divorce, froze accounts, and reclaimed my life. You know that moment when you can't quite put your finger on it? That's exactly where I found myself 3 weeks ago. My wife had declared war on me, and I didn't even realize I was already losing battles I never knew had started. It began subtly. The morning coffee that used to be ready when I woke up suddenly stopped appearing. When I asked about it, she'd give me this cold stare and say she wasn't my maid. Fair enough, I thought. I can make my own coffee. But then came the silent treatments that stretched for days. Not the usual post-argument silence, but calculated strategic silence designed to make me crack. She'd answer my questions with one-word responses, if at all. When I tried to discuss our weekend plans, she'd suddenly become very interested in her phone. When I suggested we grab dinner somewhere nice, she'd claim she already ate, even though there was no evidence of food anywhere. This wasn't normal relationship friction. This was psychological warfare. Then one day I'd hear her on the phone with her sister, and I'd walk into the kitchen. Instead of saying, "Hold on, my husband just came in," she'd say, "Hold on. Someone just walked in. Someone, not even me, just someone, like I was the mailman or a delivery guy who happened to have a key." Then came the furniture rearranging. I'd come home from work to find she'd moved the couch, bought new curtains, or completely reorganized the living room. When I'd ask about it, she'd shrug and say, "I live here too." But when I suggested we discuss major changes, she'd roll her eyes and mutter something about how some people think they have a say in everything. The breaking point should have been when she started introducing me to people as the guy who lives here. Not her husband, not by my name, just the guy. But honestly, I was curious to see how far she'd take this little game of hers. Turns out, pretty far. She'd make dinner plans without asking me, then act surprised when I expected to be included. "Oh, I didn't think you'd be interested," she'd say, like I was some roommate she barely knew. She'd use my Netflix account, eat the food I bought, sleep in the bed I helped pay for, but somehow I was just that guy who happened to exist in her space. The neighbors started giving me weird looks. Apparently, when they'd ask her about me, she'd laugh and say, "Oh, him. He's just some random guy who lives here. I don't know what his deal is." They probably thought I was her deadbeat brother or something. But here's the thing about being treated like a random guy. It gives you a certain freedom. Random guys don't have obligations. Random guys don't have to care about someone else's feelings. Random guys can make decisions without consulting anyone. And random guys, well, they can leave whenever they want. She'd gotten so comfortable with her little routine that she stopped paying attention to the details. She didn't notice when I stopped putting my name on the grocery receipts I'd leave on the counter. She didn't notice when I stopped mentioning her in conversations with my friends. She definitely didn't notice when I started keeping track of exactly who paid for what around the house. The final straw came during what was supposed to be a nice dinner with her parents. Her mother asked how we were doing, and my wife actually said, and I quote, "We're fine. Well, I'm fine. I don't really know about him. He's just some random guy who lives here." Her mother looked confused. Her father looked uncomfortable, and I just smiled and nodded like I was hearing the most reasonable thing in the world. That night after her parents left, I made myself comfortable on the couch with a beer and really started thinking. If I was just some random guy who lived here, then what exactly was I doing? Random guys don't invest in relationships. Random guys don't compromise. Random guys don't stick around where they're not wanted. But random guys also don't get pushed around. And they definitely don't let anyone take advantage of them. She was upstairs doing her skincare routine, probably planning her next gathering where she could tell everyone about the mysterious random guy who somehow ended up in her house. Meanwhile, I was downstairs opening my laptop and starting to do some very important research about our living situation. Because here's what she didn't realize. Random guys have nothing to lose. And when you have nothing to lose, you can be very, very strategic about what happens next. I spent that night going through every document, every contract, every receipt. I wanted to understand exactly what this random guy's position was in this house, and what I found was going to make the next few weeks very interesting indeed. She thought she was dealing with some pushover who'd just accept being treated like furniture. What she was actually dealing with was a man who was about to show her the difference between being wanted and being needed. And trust me, she was about to learn that lesson the hard way. The next weekend, she decided to throw a little housewarming party for the new neighbors. Not we decided, she decided. I found out about it when I came home Friday to find her on the phone ordering catering. When I raised an eyebrow, she covered the phone and whispered, It's my house too, remember? Her house, the house where I was just some random guy. Saturday evening rolled around and people started showing up. The new couple from across the street, some of her work friends, a few neighbors I'd never met. I was in the kitchen grabbing a drink when the new neighbor's wife walked up to me. "So you must be her husband," she said with a friendly smile. Before I could answer, my wife appeared like she'd been waiting in the wings. "Husband?" She laughed, actually laughed. "Oh no. This is just some random guy who lives here. I'm not really sure what his story is." The neighbor's face went from friendly to confused to deeply uncomfortable in about 3 seconds. "Oh, I'm sorry, I just assumed." "Don't worry about it," my wife said, waving her hand dismissively. "People make that mistake all the time. I keep telling him he should find his own place, but here we are." She said it like I was some stray cat that had wandered in and refused to leave. I took a long sip of my beer and smiled. "Yeah, it's complicated," I said, looking directly at the neighbor. "Sometimes people don't realize what they have until it's gone." My wife shot me a look, but I just shrugged. Random guys say random things, right? As the night went on, it got worse. Every time someone new arrived, she'd make the same joke. "This is my house, and this is, well, some random guy who lives here too. Don't ask me how that happened." Then she'd laugh like it was the funniest thing in the world. Her work friend asked if I was her brother. "God, no," my wife said. "He's just, I don't know what he is. He pays some bills and takes up space. It's like having a roommate you never asked for." I watched the faces of the people around us. Most looked genuinely confused. A few looked uncomfortable. One guy, clearly someone who'd been through his own relationship drama, caught my eye and gave me a look that said, "Brother, you need to handle this." But I wasn't ready to handle it yet. I was still in information gathering mode. The worst part came when her sister showed up. Now, her sister had never been my biggest fan, but she'd always been civil. Tonight, though, my wife had clearly been filling her in on the random guy narrative. "So, this is the famous mystery man," her sister said, looking me up and down like I was some curiosity in a museum. "She's been telling everyone about you. The guy who just exists." "That's me," I said calmly, "just existing, taking up space, breathing her air. Must be nice," her sister continued, "living somewhere for free, no responsibilities." Now that was interesting. "Free?" I asked, loud enough for several people to hear. "No responsibilities?" My wife quickly jumped in. "He helps out sometimes," she said dismissively. "You know, like anyone would, right?" I nodded slowly, like anyone would. The conversation moved on, but I could see the wheels turning in some people's heads. They were starting to piece together that something wasn't quite right with this picture. Later, when most of the guests had moved to the backyard, I found myself alone with the neighbor who had first asked if I was her husband. She'd been watching the whole show with growing concern. "Can I ask you something?" she said quietly. "What's really going on here? Because that whole random guy thing, that's not normal." I considered my options. I could play along with the game, or I could plant a seed of truth. "You know," I said, looking out at my wife who was holding court on the patio, "sometimes people get so comfortable with what they have that they forget to appreciate it. And sometimes they push so hard that they end up getting exactly what they think they want." She frowned. "What do you mean?" "Well," I said, finishing my drink, "if someone really believes you're just a random guy with no real connection to their life, maybe it's time to prove them right." Before she could ask what I meant, my wife called out from the patio, "Hey, random guy, can you get more ice from the freezer since you're just standing around anyway?" I looked at the neighbor, who now looked genuinely disturbed by what she was witnessing. "Excuse me," I said politely. "Apparently I have random guy duties to attend to." As I walked to the kitchen, I heard her sister say to someone, "I don't know why she puts up with him. If it were me, I'd have kicked him out months ago." And that's when I realized something important. This wasn't just disrespect anymore. This was a coordinated campaign to humiliate me, to make me feel so unwelcome that I'd leave on my own. She'd been setting the stage, getting people on her side, building a narrative where I was the problem. Smart move. Too bad she was playing chess with someone who'd already moved on to a completely different game. I got the ice, brought it outside, and spent the rest of the evening being the perfect random guy, helpful when asked, invisible when not needed, and very, very observant about everything happening around me. Because random guys don't just exist. Sometimes they're gathering intelligence. And sometimes when they have enough information, they stop being random and start being very, very strategic. The Monday after her little performance, I called in sick to work. Not because I was actually sick, but because I had some very important research to do. And when you're just a random guy, nobody expects you to be methodical about anything. First stop, our home office. Amazing how much paperwork accumulates when you're actually paying attention. I pulled out every document, every contract, every bill from the past 2 years, mortgage papers, utility bills, insurance policies, car registrations, everything that showed who was really responsible for keeping this little kingdom of hers running. The mortgage, both our names. But guess whose bank account the payments came from every month for the past 3 years? That's right, the random guy's account. The electricity, gas, water, internet, cable, all automatically deducted from my checking account. Her name wasn't even on half of these accounts. But here's where it got really interesting. The house insurance, solely in my name because I had better credit when we bought the place. The car she drove every day, title in my name, payments from my account, insurance through my policy. Even her cell phone was on my family plan. I made copies of everything. Random guys are thorough like that. Next, I went through our joint accounts. Turns out joint was a pretty loose term. She'd withdraw money for her shopping trips, her girls' nights, her little weekend getaways with her sister. But her paychecks? Those went into her personal account that I wasn't even supposed to know about. Found that information on her laptop, which she'd left open on the kitchen counter. Random guys notice these things when they're just standing around like furniture. While I was at it, I did a little math. Over the past year, my contributions to our household expenses, mortgage, utilities, groceries, insurance, car payments, maintenance, repairs, came to about 78% of our total costs. Her contributions, 22%, and most of that was stuff she bought for herself that she counted as household expenses. But the real treasure was in her email. See, when someone treats you like you're invisible, they get careless about privacy. Her laptop was always open, her phone always unlocked around the house. And random guys, well, we're curious creatures. The emails to her sister were particularly enlightening. Months of planning how to get me to leave voluntarily, discussions about how much she could keep if we split up, conversations about how she was laying the groundwork for people to see me as the problem in the relationship. One email really stood out. The plan is working perfectly. Everyone at the party could see what a loser he is. I'm making it so uncomfortable that he'll have to leave soon. Then I get to keep the house and everything else, and everyone will think it was his choice to go. Her sister's response, brilliant. You're making him look like some pathetic hanger-on. Nobody will blame you when he finally gets the hint. I sat back in the office chair and just stared at the screen for a while. 3 years of marriage, and this is what it had come to. A calculated campaign to humiliate me into leaving so she could keep everything we'd built together. The funny thing was, I wasn't even angry. I was impressed. She'd put together a pretty solid strategy, make me feel unwelcome, make others see me as a burden, create a narrative where my leaving would be a relief for everyone involved. If I'd actually been the pathetic loser she was painting me as, it probably would have worked. But she'd made one crucial miscalculation. She'd assumed I was emotionally invested enough to be broken by her treatment. She thought I'd get desperate and try to win her back or get depressed and just fade away. Instead, she'd accidentally given me the perfect setup for my own plan. I spent the rest of the day organizing everything into neat folders, legal documents in one pile, financial records in another, evidence of her strategy in a third. Random guys are surprisingly organized when they need to be. Then I made some phone calls to my bank to find out exactly what it would take to remove her access to accounts where she wasn't the primary holder, to the mortgage company, to understand my options as the primary borrower, to my insurance agent, to discuss policy changes, to a lawyer, just for a consultation about asset protection. All very routine stuff. Nothing dramatic. Just a random guy getting his affairs in order. The best part was when she came home that evening. I was sitting in the living room watching TV like nothing had happened. "How was your day off?" she asked, not really caring about the answer. "Productive," I said. "Did some organizing, cleaned up some paperwork. You know, random guy stuff." She barely looked up from her phone. "That's nice." If she'd been paying attention, she might have noticed that I seemed unusually relaxed, unusually confident. But people who think you're just a random guy don't pay attention to details like that. That night, while she was in the shower, I uploaded copies of all the important documents to a secure cloud account. Random guys believe in backups. I also sent a very brief email to my boss, letting him know I might need some flexibility in my schedule over the next few weeks, personal matters to attend to. He didn't ask questions. I'd been a reliable employee for years, and even random guys deserve some consideration. As I was getting ready for bed, I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. For the first time in months, I didn't see a man being slowly erased from his own life. I saw someone who'd just spent 8 hours taking back control of his situation. She wanted a random guy. Fine. But she was about to learn that random doesn't mean powerless. And sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one everyone underestimates. Tomorrow, the real fun would begin. Tuesday morning started like any other day. She left for work without saying goodbye. Random guys don't get goodbyes. But what she didn't know was that her random guy had a very busy day ahead of him. First call, the cable company. Hi, I need to make some changes to my account. Turns out when you're the account holder and you want to downgrade from premium everything to basic service, they're happy to help. New effective date, end of the month. Second call, the lawn service. Yeah, I'm going to cancel the weekly service. Just personal preference. They were disappointed. It was a good contract, but the primary account holder gets to make these decisions. Third call, the cleaning lady. We won't be needing your services anymore. She'd been coming twice a month for 2 years. My wife loved bragging to her friends about having help. Too bad random guys don't see the value in paying someone else to clean. The beauty of being treated like you don't matter is that nobody expects you to matter. She never paid attention to who actually handled the household logistics. She just enjoyed the benefits. By lunch, I'd made 12 phone calls. Gym membership for 2. Downgraded to single. Premium grocery delivery service. Canceled. The subscription services she loved but never bothered to check who paid for them. Spotify, Netflix Premium, Amazon Prime, all the streaming services. Modified or canceled. But I wasn't reckless about it. I kept everything she actually paid for herself. Her personal subscription stayed untouched. This wasn't about being petty. This was about clarity. When she came home that evening, nothing seemed different. The lights worked. The internet was still on. The house looked the same. Random guys make subtle moves. "How was your day?" I asked, like I actually cared. "Fine," she said, scrolling through her phone. "Same boring routine. At least I have my yoga class tomorrow night. I need some me time away from..." She gestured vaguely in my direction. "All this. Sounds great," I said. "You should definitely take care of yourself." She looked at me suspiciously. Random guys usually just grunted or said nothing when she talked about her activities. But she shrugged it off and went to the kitchen. That's when the first crack appeared. "Why is there no food?" she called out. "Didn't you do the grocery shopping?" I walked to the kitchen doorway. Actually, I canceled the delivery service. Figured since I'm just some random guy who lives here, I shouldn't be making decisions about what food comes into your house. She stared at me. "What do you mean you canceled it?" "Well, it was on my account, and I realized that was presumptuous of me. Random guys shouldn't be taking that kind of initiative." Her eyes narrowed. "So what are we supposed to eat?" "We." I raised an eyebrow. "I picked up some stuff for myself today. But we suggests a partnership, and I didn't think that's what this was." She opened the refrigerator. It wasn't empty. It wasn't the fully stocked situation she was used to either. Just basics. Random guy basics. "This is ridiculous," she said. "Just because you're having some kind of mood doesn't mean you should make things difficult for both of us." "I'm not making anything difficult," I said calmly. "I'm just adjusting my random guy behavior to match my random guy status. Seems fair." She slammed the refrigerator door. "Fine, I'll order something." And she tried. Pulled out her phone, opened her usual delivery app, and that's when she hit the second wall. The premium account that gave her free delivery and exclusive restaurants, that was tied to my credit card, which I'd removed that afternoon. "What's wrong with this app?" she muttered, trying to figure out why she was suddenly being charged delivery fees. "Technical difficulties?" I suggested helpfully. While she wrestled with her phone, I went to the living room and turned on the TV. That's when she discovered wall number 3. "Why are there only basic channels?" she yelled from the kitchen. "Oh, I downgraded the cable," I called back. "Random guys don't really need 200 channels. Basic is fine for basic people." She stormed into the living room. "You can't just change things without discussing them with me." I looked at her with genuine confusion. But I thought I was just some random guy who lives here. Random guys don't usually get consulted about household decisions. I was just following your lead. That's not what I meant, and you know it. "Actually, I don't know it," I said, clicking through the basic channels. You've been pretty clear about my status here. I'm just adjusting my contributions to match that status. Makes sense, right? She stood there for a moment, probably trying to figure out if she wanted to have this fight. Instead, she grabbed her purse. I'm going out to eat, she announced. Sounds good, I said. I'll probably just make a sandwich. Random guy food. She paused at the door. Are you going to keep saying that? Saying what? Random guy this, random guy that. It's annoying. I looked at her seriously. Well, it's what I am according to you. I figured I should embrace it. Own my randomness. She left without another word. While she was gone, I made myself a perfectly good dinner with the groceries I'd actually bought that day. Then I sat down with my laptop and continued phase 2 of the plan. Email to the mortgage company requesting information about modifying the payment method. Email to the insurance company asking about policy adjustments. Email to my lawyer scheduling a follow-up consultation. When she came home 2 hours later, I was watching one of the basic cable channels, perfectly content. We need to talk, she said. Sure, I said, not looking away from the TV. What's on your mind? All these changes you made today. You can't just unilaterally decide things. Unilaterally, I repeated. That's a big word to use with a random guy. Are you sure I'll understand? Her face was getting red now. Stop it. Just stop with the random guy thing. But that's what you told everyone at the party. That's what you tell your sister. That's what you tell the neighbors. I'm just being consistent. Those were jokes. I finally looked at her. Were they? Because from where I sit, it seemed like you were pretty serious about establishing that I don't really belong here. She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it again. Because what could she say? That she was lying to everyone? That she was just humiliating me for fun? Look, she said finally, maybe I went too far with some of that, but you're overreacting. I don't think I'm reacting at all, I said calmly. I'm just adapting to the situation you created. You wanted a random guy who lives here. Congratulations. You got one. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her trying to figure out what had changed. Why wasn't I getting upset? Why wasn't I begging her to stop treating me this way? Why wasn't I fighting to prove that I mattered? Because random guys don't fight for their place. They either have one or they don't. And if they don't, well, random guys can be surprisingly resourceful about creating their own space. By Thursday, the cracks were starting to show in her perfect little world. She'd spent 2 days trying to pretend nothing had changed, but reality has a way of catching up with people who take things for granted. It started with her morning routine. She went to use her fancy coffee machine, the one with the premium subscription for specialty pods that got delivered monthly. Except the delivery didn't come because random guys don't maintain subscriptions for other people's luxuries. The coffee machine isn't working right, she complained. Pressing buttons like that would solve the problem. Probably just needs new pods, I said, sipping my regular coffee that I'd made with my regular coffee maker. Well, where are they? They usually just show up. I looked at her over my cup. Do they? That's convenient. Almost like someone was handling that for you. She stared at the machine for another minute before giving up and grabbing a granola bar instead. Random guys don't explain subscription services they no longer pay for. The real fun started when she got home from work. She'd clearly had a frustrating day and was looking forward to her usual stress relief routine, a long bath with her expensive bath products, followed by her favorite streaming shows. She lasted about 10 minutes in the bathroom before I heard her yelling, "The hot water is barely warm." What's wrong with the water heater? Nothing was wrong with the water heater, but I'd called the utility company and adjusted our service plan. Instead of the premium plan with unlimited hot water, we were now on the standard residential plan, good enough for normal people, but not quite enough for someone who liked to take 40-minute luxury baths. Might be a maintenance issue, I called back. Random guys aren't really qualified to diagnose water heater problems. She came stomping out of the bathroom in her robe. This house is falling apart. First the coffee, now the water heater, yesterday the cable, what's next? Could be anything, I said sympathetically. Houses require a lot of maintenance, really take someone who pays attention to details. She grabbed her laptop to distract herself with Netflix, and that's when she discovered that her favorite shows weren't available anymore. The premium subscription had been downgraded to basic, which meant no more exclusive content, no more multiple simultaneous streams, and definitely no more 4K quality. Even the internet is acting weird, she muttered, trying to stream something on her phone instead. The internet wasn't acting weird. It was just working exactly as advertised for our new basic plan. Perfectly fine for normal usage, but not quite fast enough for multiple high-definition streams while she video chatted with her sister. By Friday evening, she was clearly rattled. Her comfortable, predictable world was becoming unreliable in small but annoying ways, and she couldn't figure out why. That's when her sister called with an invitation to their usual weekend spa day, the kind of expensive girls' trip they'd been taking monthly for the past year. I could hear both sides of the conversation from where I was sitting. "I can't afford it this month," my wife was saying. "Things are tight right now." "What do you mean tight?" her sister asked. "You're always talking about how you have everything handled." "I don't know. Everything just seems more expensive lately. The house is having all these issues and I had to pay for groceries myself this week." "And wait, you had to pay for groceries yourself? What does that mean?" There was a long pause. "Nothing. It's complicated." "Is this about the random guy situation? I thought you were handling that." Another pause. "I thought I was too." After she hung up, she sat on the couch looking genuinely confused, like she was trying to solve a puzzle but couldn't figure out what pieces were missing. "Can I ask you something?" she said finally. "Sure. Are you punishing me for something?" I considered the question seriously. "Punishing you? No. Why would I punish you? All these things that are going wrong, the house stuff, the subscriptions, everything." "What thing's going wrong?" She gestured around the room. "You know, the cable, the food delivery, the coffee thing, the water heater." "Oh, those aren't things going wrong," I said. "Those are just things changing. I made some adjustments to simplify my life." "Your life? What about my life?" And there it was, the first crack in her facade. For months, she'd been treating our shared life like it was entirely hers, with me as some unwelcome intruder. But when her comfort started disappearing, suddenly it became our problem again. "Well," I said thoughtfully, "I figured since I'm just a random guy who lives here, I should probably live more like a random guy. Random guys don't maintain premium everything for households they're not really part of. But you are part of this household. Am I? Because that's not the impression I've been getting." She couldn't answer that, because she had meant it. Every time she called me a random guy, every time she acted like I was some burden she was tolerating, every time she made me feel invisible in my own life, she'd meant all of it. "So what now?" she asked. "Now we live with the choices we've made. You wanted to treat me like I don't really belong here, so I'm adjusting my behavior accordingly. You wanted independence, so you're getting it. That's not what I wanted, isn't it? Because you seemed pretty happy with the arrangement when you thought it was just affecting me." She sat there for a while, probably realizing that her plan to make me uncomfortable enough to leave had backfired spectacularly. Instead of making me desperate to prove my worth, she'd accidentally shown me exactly how little I needed her approval. The house phone rang. Yes, we still had a landline because I'm old-fashioned like that. She answered it, and I could tell from her voice that it wasn't good news. When she hung up, she looked pale. That was the heating company. "They're coming to service the furnace next week, but they need the primary account holder to be here." "Okay," I said. "That's me." "You? I thought we both—" "Nope, just me. Random guy handles the random stuff like heating, apparently." She stared at me, and I could see her finally starting to understand the scope of what was happening. This wasn't just about cable channels and coffee subscriptions. This was about who actually kept her comfortable world running. And that random guy, he was just getting started. Saturday morning, she woke up to no hot water at all. The heating company had moved up their service call after I explained that the random guy who actually paid the bills needed immediate attention. "What is happening to this house?" she said, standing in the bathroom doorway looking defeated. "Nothing's happening to it," I said, already dressed and ready for the day. "You're just seeing what it looks like when someone stops taking care of it for you." That's when I decided it was time for the final conversation. "Sit down," I said, gesturing to the kitchen table where I'd laid out a folder full of papers. "We need to talk." She sat down wearily, eyeing the documents. "For the past week, you've been wondering why your comfortable life started falling apart. Let me explain." I opened the folder and spread out the papers. Mortgage statements, utility bills, insurance policies, bank statements. "This is the mortgage payment. Guess whose account it comes from every month?" I pointed to the highlighted bank routing number. "This is the electric bill, also mine. Gas, water, internet, insurance, all mine." Her face was getting paler with each document. "Your car payment, mine. Your car insurance, mine. That cell phone you're holding, my family plan. I pulled out another set of papers. This is your contribution to our household expenses over the past year, 22%. And most of that was stuff you bought for yourself. But I pay for things too, she said weakly. Your personal shopping, your girls' nights, your spa treatments. Sure. But the actual cost of maintaining the life you've been enjoying, that's been on me. I leaned back in my chair. Now here's the interesting part. You spent months treating me like some random guy who just happened to live in your house, telling everyone I was a burden, making jokes about how you didn't know why you put up with me. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. So I decided to give you exactly what you wanted, a life without me supporting it. I pulled out the final document, a lease agreement. I found a place across town, 1 bedroom, perfect for a random guy. The lease starts Monday. You're leaving? You wanted me to leave. You made that clear to everyone who would listen. Well, congratulations. You got your wish. She stared at the lease agreement. But what about the house? What about everything? What about it? You've been acting like it's all yours anyway. Now you get to prove it. I stood up and walked to the window. The mortgage payment is due on the 15th. That's next week. The utility bills are all in my name, so you'll need to transfer them or set up new service. The insurance expires at the end of the month. I can't afford all of that on my own. Well, that's unfortunate. But you should have thought about that before you decided I was just some random guy who contributed nothing to your life. She was crying now, but I felt nothing. No guilt, no satisfaction, just clarity. This is insane. You can't just abandon everything because your feelings got hurt. My feelings? I laughed. This has nothing to do with feelings. This is about reality. You wanted to live independently, treating me like I was irrelevant to your life. Now you get to actually do it. We can fix this, she said desperately. I'll stop the random guy thing. I'll tell people the truth. The truth? The truth is that you showed me exactly who you are when you thought there would be no consequences. And I showed you exactly who I am when I decided I was done accepting it. I walked toward the door and stopped. You know what the funny thing is? If you'd treated me with basic respect, if you'd acted like we were partners instead of treating me like some unwanted roommate, none of this would have happened. I picked up my keys from the counter. The random guy is moving out. You wanted your space. You got it. All of it. As I reached for the door handle, she called out one last time, "Where does this leave us?" I turned back to look at her sitting at the table, surrounded by all the evidence of what she was losing. Us? There is no us. There's you, and there's me, and there's the choice you made to treat me like I didn't matter. I opened the door. Enjoy your independence. You earned it. And with that, the random guy walked out of her life, taking everything that actually mattered with him. Our story has come to an end. If you've made it this far, how about subscribing to our channel? It helps us immensely. I've selected 2 other videos for you that I'm sure you'll enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I'll be waiting for you in the next story. See you soon.